When it comes to preparing for a job interview, there are 5 things that you can do in order to reduce your stress, feel more confident, and feel prepared for that interview. Hey, my name's Abby, and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today, I would like to share 5 tips on things that you can do to help yourself feel more prepared for your next interview. But before we jump into that content, please go ahead and remember to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. So the first thing that you can do in order to feel more prepared for your next job interview is to have your application materials easily available for you to refer back to. So these are things like the resume that you uploaded, the cover letter that you uploaded, a copy of the job posting that you applied to, as well as your answers to any supplemental questions that may have been asked as a part of the job application. I highly recommend that you have a copy of the job posting that you applied to easily available. I also recommend that you review that ahead of your interview and have specific sections and areas highlighted so that you can refer to the exact key words and phrases during your interview that are listed on the job posting. This not only helps you feel more prepared, but it allows you to use key words and phrases that the hiring manager or whoever is interviewing you is aware of and listening for. So if you can strategically review the job posting and intentionally use the words and phrases that are listed on the job posting during your interview when you're answering interview questions, that will set you apart from other candidates. You also want to have your resume and your cover letter available so that you can refer back to it quickly, just in case the interviewer has any specific questions about your experience. You don't want to be redundant and list things verbally that you've already written on your resume and cover letter. You want to expand beyond what you've already provided to the hiring team. And finally, you also want to have your answers to the supplemental questions that you may have answered as a part of the job application available so that you can refer back to those, because there may be a question that the hiring team asks you to expand on, or you can refer back to your answers on the supplemental questions if it relates to a question that you're being asked in the interview. Once you have pulled all of your application materials together and you got your resume, your cover letter, you've got a copy of the job posting, and you've got a copy of your answers to the supplemental questions, it's time to do your research. You want to do your research on the organization. You want to do your research on the position. You want to do your research on the interviewer or the interviewers. And you can go about doing your research in various ways. So first, doing your research on the organization. Go to their website. Look up their mission, vision, and values. You'll likely find this on the About page of their website. See if there's any specific projects or achievements that the organization as a whole has listed. You also want to do your research on the specific position that you've applied to. So in addition to reviewing the job posting that you applied to, you also want to try to Google other positions that are related to this one that you've applied to. That will not only give you a bigger and wider vocabulary when it comes to what words and phrases you can use to describe your experience in relation to the position, but it will also allow you to figure out what the reasonable hiring range might be when it comes to salary. You can also decide what are the technical skills that are required for this position. What are the soft or personable skills that are required for this position? You may want to use the resource ONET to do your research on the type of position that you've applied to. The website that you'd want to visit is onetonline.org, and it is a website that's run by the Bureau of Labor Statistics here in the United States, and it is a great resource for doing your research on any type of position. You type in the position title, and then a list of positions that are similar to the position title that you've entered in will come up. You can go into a specific job title or job group, and you can find out the different knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required for that position. You can do your research on the different types of salaries that you can expect. There's a huge amount of information available on ONET that will help you feel more prepared and knowledgeable about the specific position that you've applied to. And finally, you want to do your research on the interviewer or the interviewers who are going to be present during your interview. A simple Google search might be sufficient. Google the people's names who will be included in the interview. Things that might come up are professional organizations that they may be affiliated with, their LinkedIn profile, any articles that they may have written. So if you can take in some of this information about the interviewers, this will set you up for success because you're getting to know the interviewers on a more personal level, and you'll be able to ask them very personalized questions during the interview process. You also can figure out what their interests are and maybe what motivates them. And then you can tailor some of your answers to the interview questions so that it connects to and relates to the interviewers on the panel. Ideally, what you want to do during your interview is stand out from the crowd. And you can do this by preparing and getting to know the interviewers prior to the interview so that you can tailor your answers specifically to the people who will be present so that they can be impressed with the depth and breadth of knowledge and experience that you bring to the table when you've strategically slid in some interesting tidbits or knowledge that you know, not only about the position, but also the people who are in the interview room with you. So once you've gotten all of your application materials together and you've done your research on the organization, the position, and the interviewer or interviewers, it's time to prepare your answers to common interview questions. Now, I've got a list of 52 behavioral-based interview questions available for free on my website. So I've got a link to that in the description below. Please go ahead and download that. It will give you 52 possible questions that could be asked of you during the interview process. These are behavior-based interview questions, which are very common. And what's great about behavior-based interview questions is that there is a formula that you can use to prepare answers for any behavior-based question. I've actually got a video on this, and it's going over the formula CAR or STAR. So you want to be able to prepare your answers for behavior-based interview questions by using one of those formulas. You provide some context about the situation that you're describing, the actions that you took in that situation, and the results that those actions achieved. That formula will allow you to easily answer any behavioral-based interview question. You will also want to prepare your answers to very common interview questions, such as, tell me about yourself. I guarantee you will be asked that question or a version of that question at the very beginning of your interview. So if you can prepare your answer to that question, then you'll know you'll have your interview starting off on a very smooth foot. You may also want to prepare your answers for the dreaded weaknesses question and even the strengths question. So the interviewer may ask you about your strengths and your weaknesses, so have a few prepared. I've also got a video on this that can help you prepare for how to answer that question. So now that you've gathered your application materials, you've done your research, and you've prepared your answers to common interview questions, it's time to prepare your questions for the interviewers when they're done asking you all of their questions. So it's very likely that you will be asked, do you have any questions for us? Absolutely, under no circumstances do you say no. You should have at least 3 questions prepared to ask at the end of your interview. I've got a video on this as well, and this video goes into detail about the 3 different questions that you can have prepared for the end of your interview. If you haven't already, please check that out. It will not only help you feel prepared during the interview when you're asked that question, but it will help you stand out. And finally, now that you've pulled your application materials, you've done your research, you've prepared your answers to interview questions, and you've also prepared questions for the end of your interview, it's time to consider logistics. If your interview is going to be in person, you want to consider what you're going to wear. Make sure that it's professional. At minimum, you want it to be one step above the dress code for the job. So if you're working in a job that is business casual, you may want to make it a little bit more formal. If you're going to be working a job where you're going to be able to wear jeans and a t-shirt, you may want to dress it up to business casual. You also need to consider, where will you go? Do you need to go across town? Are you going to get there via bus, via train, via car, or are you going to be able to walk? Once you get to the location where the interview is going to be held, where at that location do you need to go? What building do you need to go into? What floor? Do you need specific access? Should you get there 15 minutes early, or with the pandemic, do you need to be there right on time? You also need to consider what you're going to bring with you, if you're allowed to bring anything with you. Traditionally, I recommend bringing a notepad, and you can have all of your application materials in that notebook with you. You use a notepad so that you can take notes during the interview. You can have your questions that you've pre-prepared listed on that piece of paper. You can have your resume, your cover letter, your answers to supplemental questions, your application materials stashed in that portfolio. Bring something with you. If you're not allowed to bring it in with you, you can leave it outside of the room. Or if your interview is not in person and it's instead over the phone or virtually, you still need to consider what you're going to wear. Even if it's a phone interview and you're not going to be seeing the person on the other line, research has been shown that if you dress the part, you actually feel more confident during your interview. So instead of dressing in your sweats or your pajamas, dress up for the interview as if you were actually interviewing in person. Same thing with your video interview. Dress up as if you were interviewing in person. Do not just wear something professional on the top. You want to dress professional both on the top and on the bottom, just in case anything wonky happens. You want to ensure that if you were to stand up or if your computer were to close, there's no chance that someone's going to see your boxers through the camera in some weird circumstance. So make sure that you are fully dressed and clothed and that you are professional. You also want to consider where you're going to interview. You don't want to interview in your car or in a busy location where there's lots of background noise. You want to interview in a place where it's quiet, where there's good lighting if you're going to be on camera, where you're not going to be distracted or the interviewers won't be distracted by seeing things going on in your background. And then finally, what equipment do you need? If it's a phone interview, do you just need your phone? Or do you need your headphones that has a really good microphone and speakers so that you can not only communicate effectively to the interviewer on the other end of the line, but you can also hear them effectively? If it's going to be video, do you need a specific camera? Do you need a microphone? Do you need speakers? Do you need a light? Or do you need to sit close to a window? So what type of equipment do you need to be successful for this interview? So once you've considered your logistics, you should be set. You should feel prepared and ready and confident for your interview. Hopefully you have a reduction in stress and anxiety because you've done your due diligence to prepare. You have prepared your application materials. You've got a copy of your resume, your cover letter, the actual job posting that you applied to, and your answers to the supplemental questions that you may have answered. You've done your research, not only on the organization, but also on the interview panel or the single interviewer. You've also done your research on the position that you have applied to. You know what the market looks like. You know what types of duties to expect when it comes to this position. You've also prepared your answers to common interview questions. And you've prepared your questions for the interviewers at the end of the interview. And finally, you've considered the logistics. So once you've done those 5 things, you will hopefully feel more prepared for your interview. It should not take a lot of time and effort to go through this process. If anything, it could take as little as 30 minutes, maybe an hour of your time to adequately prepare for your interview. With these steps, I hope that you have a successful interview. If you have any questions or comments about this, please let me know in the comments box below. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. If you found this video helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And please remember, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.